Welcome to the League of Women Voters Candidates Interviews for the 5th Middlesex District of Massachusetts State Senate, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Winchester. My name is Patty Muldoon, and as a member of the Arlington League, it is my pleasure to introduce today's candidates interviews, which feature 3 candidates who are running for the Democratic Party's nomination to be on the special election ballot to fill the vacancy when Katherine Clark was elected to represent the district in the U.S. Congress. Before we begin the candidates' interviews, just a few words about the League of Women Voters. Membership is open to women and to men, and throughout its 93-year history, the League has built a solid reputation for providing fair and educational candidates forums for the benefit of voters. In addition, our activities support informed participation in government and increased public understanding of major policy issues. Based on grassroots membership input, the League also seeks to influence public policy through education and advocacy. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts Constitution outlines the responsibilities of the 40 state senators. Each senator's duties vary according to their stature and party affiliation. The Senate has many committees that focus on particular responsibility, as does the House. Committees include Ways and Means, Steering, Rules and Ethics, Capital Expenditures, Bills, Drug Abuse and Treatment, Climate Change, and Audit and Oversight. Last but not least, a senator acts as a conduit between the federal government and local authorities and residents of the district that he or she represents. And now, I will explain the format and ground rules for today's candidates' interviews. I will read the brief biographies that each candidate has supplied before I interviewed them. Each candidate will present a short opening statement of 2 minutes. The order of interviews was determined earlier by a coin toss. Questions have been submitted by the public to be asked of each candidate, and each response will have a time limit. As moderator, I may follow up on questions, and I will give them the time limit for each response. All the candidates have a 1-minute closing statement. And now I would like to welcome Representative Jason Lewis. Jason Lewis serves as the state representative for the 31st Middlesex District, representing the people of Stoneham and Winchester. He was first elected to the Massachusetts House of Representatives in 2008 and serves as the vice chair of the Joint Committee on Public Health. Jason co-founded and serves as the House chair for the legislature's Prevention for Health Caucus. Jason has led efforts in the state legislature to contain healthcare costs and to reform the state's education financing system. He is the lead sponsor of the earned sick time legislation and the single payer legislation, and has brought in millions of dollars to his district for transportation improvements, school building projects, and flood mitigation projects, to name just a few. Prior to entering public service, Jason had a long track record of accomplishment in the private sector, having helped build 2 successful software companies. Jason and his wife Susan are raising their 2 daughters, Sophie and Jessie, who attend Winchester Public Schools. Thank you for coming, and I invite you to give us your opening statement now for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Patty, and let me start by thanking the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum today. I'm running for the state senate because I believe I can bring the same strong and effective progressive leadership for our communities that Katherine Clark provided. I've had the great privilege of representing Stoneham and Winchester in the House of Representatives for the past 5 years. I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish together, securing millions of dollars for local economic development, including new schools, transportation improvements, and flood mitigation. Leading the effort in the state legislature to ensure adequate and equitable funding for all of our public schools. Creating a first-in-the-nation prevention and wellness trust to improve the quality of health care and to lower costs. And improving state government transparency, accountability, and efficiency. As your state senator, I would continue to fight for working families and to improve the quality of life in our communities by raising the minimum wage, protecting unemployment benefits, providing paid sick time for all of our workers, and ensuring adequate funding for local aid and other vital services that our communities need to thrive. I ask for your vote on March 4th so that our district will continue to have strong, effective, progressive leadership in the state Senate. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will start the question and answer part of the interview. I'll remind our audience again that candidates have not seen the questions in advance. They were solicited from the public, so these are your questions. We'll get through as many as we can in the time that we have. So Jason, when you arrive in the Senate, what will your top priorities be for the 5th District?
So what I would hope to accomplish in the Senate is to really build on what I've already been able to do in the House of Representatives. So first, one of the main reasons that I ran for office in the first place was to support our public schools. And so continuing to work to update and reform the Chapter 70 school funding formula so that we can ensure adequate and equitable funding for all of our public schools. I'm the lead sponsor of that legislation, and I've worked very hard on that issue, and that would continue to be a priority. Second would be health care. I serve as the vice chair for the Public Health Committee now, and I've been a leader on efforts to improve the quality of care, to focus more on prevention and wellness, to bring down rates of chronic diseases and lower healthcare costs, and that would continue to be an area I'd work on. And then third would be the advocating and championing policies that help our working families, things that I spoke about in my opening statement, like raising the minimum wage, ensuring earned sick time for all of our workers, and protecting unemployment benefits.
Great, thank you so much. So getting into some of the specifics. Transportation is critical for cities and towns, and we'd like to hear about your priorities and how you would fund them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, that's critical to all of our communities across the 5th Middlesex Senate District. Having good, reliable, safe public transportation, both commuter rail service, the T service, bus service, our roads, our bridges, and our other infrastructure is very important. I've been a strong advocate in the House of Representatives for supporting our transportation, both for the quality of life that it provides as well as for the important role it plays in economic growth and in our local and regional economy. I was a strong supporter of securing the necessary funding to support our public transportation over the last several years. I supported legislation to increase funding for public transportation, which raised the gas tax modestly and indexed it to inflation. I actually thought that we should have ideally done more to support the necessary revenue, but that was essentially the best that we were able to do at that time. But I would continue to fight for the necessary resources for public transportation and other transportation priorities in our region, particularly for the MBTA.
Well, given that you have supported the gas tax initiative, mm-hmm. What is your stand on the new ballot initiative to reduce the tax on gasoline?
Well, I think that would be a big mistake. Our gas tax, prior to raising it last year by 3 cents, it hadn't been raised since the early 1990s, and the gas tax, due to inflation, had lost more than 25% of its value. And that's one of the reasons we see our infrastructure struggling and deteriorating, whether it's our roads, our bridges, or the MBTA. So the hope now is that by being able to at least keep up with inflation, and that's all that the indexing does, we'll be able to continue to have the resources we need to make sure we have a safe and reliable transportation system. So I would oppose the ballot question.
Quite clearly, yes, thank you. So moving on to another area. What do you see as the state's role in funding pre-K and full-time kindergarten education?
So this is another critical area. I talked a little bit about my work in K through 12 and how we fund our K through 12 with the and my work on the Chapter 70 formula and ensuring adequate and equitable funding. But I really see the role of public education spanning all the way from pre-K through to higher ed. And when you look at the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we don't have gold mines or silver mines, we don't have oil, we don't have natural gas in this state. What we have that drives our economy is right up here. It's intellectual capital. And that's what creates new businesses, that's what creates jobs. And all of that, the foundation for all of that in the innovation economy, so-called, is a strong education system. And we know from lots and lots of research that children need to get a good start at a young age, 2 years old, 3 years old, to be able to start to have access to quality preschool and then a good kindergarten program. So for those kids and those communities where families are not able to access it, then I do believe it's the role of our government and state government and federal government to help provide access to quality pre-K and strong kindergarten programs for all children.
So what about the intellectual capital to be found in students that need special education? What about funding for that? It's really challenging for cities and towns.
It absolutely is, and we've seen a tremendous growth in students with all kinds of different special needs, some of those on the autism spectrum and other special needs as well. And that's one of the reasons that I have worked so hard and championed updating our school funding formula, because one of the main areas where the formula understates what our public schools truly need, I believe, and many experts agree with me, is in the area of special education. It has not kept up with the needs that we're actually seeing in our schools, and therefore we're not providing adequate and equitable funding to all of our school systems to meet those needs. And a big reason that the Massachusetts Teachers Association, the MTA, has endorsed my candidacy in this race is because I've been a leader on this critical issue of how do we provide adequate funding for our public schools for all types of students.
And just a quick follow-up on that minor matter of where is that money going to come from? We obviously can't use the gas tax.
That's right. Well, that is a very important question, and that has been, unfortunately, the reason, at least the reason given for some people on Beacon Hill to not, to not move forward with this issue. And my view is that what we really should have in Massachusetts is a progressive income tax. Right now we have a flat tax, which is because that's what's written into our state constitution. So I would support a constitutional amendment to have a progressive income tax. And short of that, if that's not feasible in the near term, I support legislation called an Act to Invest in Our Communities, which would modestly raise the income tax while increasing the personal exemption, so that we wouldn't ask middle income and lower income families to pay any more, but we would ask those who are doing very well and can afford to contribute some more to help support needs like our public schools and transportation and health care.
That was a big question. That was just a follow-up. Where's it coming from?
There's a lot to that.
So let me ask you on another area. We have in this state thousands of unfilled jobs requiring skills that many of our unemployed can't fill. Is there a role for state government in bridging this gap?
I think there definitely is. I don't think state government can do this alone. I think it really calls for public-private partnerships. But you're absolutely right. We have several 100,000 jobs that are unfilled right now in the state, and they are mostly in growth industries, in healthcare, in the clean energy sector, in technology. And then we do have too many people who are unemployed, and there's a mismatch in many cases in skills. And so I think encouraging good, smart job training programs, workforce development, transition programs for workers at different stages in their career so that they are able to move into the industries that are growing and into the job categories where we're seeing growth is something that we are doing some of today, but I think we need to dramatically expand those types of programs. That's for workers who are already in the economy, particularly older ones. I think what we need to do for younger people who are in 2- and 4-year colleges and universities is we need to create much stronger linkages between the programs in those colleges and universities and the needs of our employers in different regions in the state. So the idea would be that students, whether they're going into engineering fields, healthcare fields, or even the humanities, are being able to have an opportunity for internships and for courses of study that prepare them with the skills to be able to move into those kinds of careers where we're seeing growth.
Thank you. And I want to ask you for this next one to take a couple of minutes to look at the health care insurance. Do you think it's working in Massachusetts? What is the impact of Obamacare, and does it need any fixing?
So very big question. As I said at the outset, 2 of my top priorities that I've worked on and would continue to work on the state senate are education and healthcare. So I'm glad you're asking about healthcare. Let me start by saying I believe that healthcare should be a basic human right. I don't believe that it should be tied to your employer or tied to your economic financial circumstances whether or not you can access healthcare. I believe that every person, cradle to grave, should be able to have the health care that they need. That said, unfortunately, we don't have that kind of system today in this country. Massachusetts comes probably the closest of any state to ensuring that everybody does have access to health insurance, and that if they can't afford it, that that there's help available through subsidies and other ways to help people access their insurance. So we've been a leader on this issue all the way back to 2006. About 98% of our citizens are insured. That said, we still have major challenges with health care. We have very wide disparities in the quality of care. Our health care costs are far too high and growing at an unsustainable rate. More and more costs are being shifted onto families and in terms of co-pays and deductibles and co-insurance. So that's why I've worked very hard on ways to address prevention and wellness, because I think one of the strategies is if we can bring down rates of chronic diseases that are preventable, like type 2 diabetes, certain kinds of heart disease and stroke, not only will people be able to live healthier, more productive lives, but we will bring down healthcare costs over time. So that's a very important part of the strategy. I think we are going through some bumps right now in implementing the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, but I think we will get through those. And we will be stronger for it as a result, because there will be some new opportunities, expansion of mass health, for example, that will help us to deliver even better, more affordable health care to more Massachusetts residents.
Thank you. So you already mentioned this once, but we're going to delve into it a little more. Income inequality. It has produced extremes in the distribution of wealth, and I'd like to hear your reflection on how it's playing out right here in the 5th Middlesex District.
So I'm glad you asked that. At kind of big picture level, I think the 2 biggest challenges facing our society, certainly right here in our own communities and across the state, I would say in the whole country, are the issue of climate change, which we might still get to later in this conversation, and second, the issue of income inequality, which we're talking about right now. This is something that we have not seen levels of income and asset inequality since the late 1920s, since basically right before the Great Depression that we've seen, and we've had this problem really growing since the 1980s. And I think it actually is at the point where it threatens the fabric of our society. It also threatens our economic growth, because you look at the periods when we've had our strongest economic growth, and it's periods like in the 1950s, a post-war period, and the 1990s, when we had less income inequality, when there was greater sharing of the fruits of our labor. I think there's a number of reasons for it. I mean, one of those is definitely the decline of organized labor, both in the public and certainly in the private sector, and that's one of the reasons we're seeing this. Also globalization and new technology. So these are very serious issues for us. There's many ways we're going to have to address it. We've talked about some of the issues around unemployment and retraining, but there's also steps we need to take, like raising the minimum wage, ensuring paid sick time for all workers, some of the things that I've been a leader on, and continuing to improve our education and healthcare systems.
Well, you've already answered my follow-up.
Okay.
What do we do?
Yep.
So those are all things that we would do in Massachusetts.
Well, so those are some of the things. I think there's things we want to do to help our working families and our poor, to kind of get them to create more opportunity. I mean, a lot of that starts, as we said, with very young children, making sure that they have access to good education and the opportunity to develop to their full potential. Those who are working, I believe that if somebody is able-bodied and they work a full-time job, then they should be able to earn a living wage with decent benefits. They shouldn't be working full-time and living in poverty. I think that's morally wrong. So that's a strategy that we can use there as well. And then I think the other end of the spectrum is that we do have to have a more fair and progressive tax system. I think we need to have that at the state level and at the federal level, so that we actually have the revenues that our state and local and federal governments need to provide the kinds of good quality education, for all students, affordable housing, transportation, healthcare, and so on. In many cases today, we don't have those necessary resources, and we're shortchanging a lot of our programs.
So digging into one aspect of that, how would you address the lack of diversity in housing?
Mm-hmm. A big challenge, particularly for our region, because a lot of the growth in this region is going to be constrained by lack of affordable housing. So one of the things I'm very excited about, and there's a big opportunity in the 5th Middlesex Senate District, is smart growth or transit-oriented development. So what we're seeing, which I think is really interesting and exciting, is that in 30, 40, 50 years ago, people wanted to move out of cities and live in suburban bedroom communities. And now we're seeing, particularly for young people, just the opposite. They want to be in urban areas, or they want to be in town centers. And so, for example, the city of Malden has a wonderful opportunity to continue to develop its urban core, which is right on public transit. Winchester has the same thing. Reading does as well. Melrose. We need to wrap up. But I think that's a good opportunity where we can add housing along with retail space and mixed-use development.
So, the minimum wage. Do you want to raise it?
As I said before, I think I'm a strong proponent of raising the minimum wage. I think it should be raised to somewhere around $11 an hour. I think it should be indexed to inflation, because we have the same exact issue that we have with the gas tax. Otherwise, it just loses value every year as inflation eats away at it.
Thank you. I think
we need to raise it. I just would add one last thing. There are some people who say, well, there should be a quid pro quo. If we raise the minimum wage, we should also cut unemployment insurance. And I think that's completely wrong, and we should not be tying one to the other.
Thank you for adding that. All right. So, another question. Given the multiplicity of state responsibilities and the expenses that they generate, do you see opportunities for more efficient use of our tax dollars? Tell us where.
So state government is very large. There's lots of different agencies and many, many different missions that they have. And any organization that large, I think whether it's public sector or private sector, there's always room for improvement and efficiencies. And in fact, one of the pieces of legislation that I have filed it's modeled after something that Connecticut did, where they did a top-to-bottom review of all of their different agencies across state government. They looked at opportunities for greater efficiencies. They looked at opportunities for more a better delivery of services for citizens, for example, using online technology. And they identified several hundred different ideas. So I've filed similar legislation. It's actually been adopted by the House of Representatives, but it hasn't yet passed the Senate. And I think that would be a great opportunity for us to take a look at all aspects of state government for ways to do things smarter and better.
All right. Thank you so very much. And I guess if you make it to the Senate, then you can carry that legislation through. We would like to hear your closing statement, if you'll take a minute to do that, please.
Okay. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate having this opportunity to share my thoughts and values and priorities with the voters. The choice before the voters on March 4th is whether to send a Democrat to the state Senate who can bring the same kind of strong and effective progressive leadership for our communities that Catherine Clark provided. I have a proven track record of fighting for local economic development that improves the quality of life in our communities, championing adequate and equitable funding for our public schools, increasing access and affordability of health care, and being a leader in the struggle for equal rights and equal opportunity for all. I ask for your vote on March 4th so that we can continue this very important work together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
So, to begin our interview today, we have Christopher Fallon with us. Chris Fallon represents the 33rd Middlesex District in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. A graduate of Austin Preparatory School in Reading, Representative Fallon earned his undergraduate degree from Merrimack College in Lowell. His master's thesis was in the field of biochemical genetics. Representative Fallon received his Juris Doctor from Suffolk Law School and has been a member of the Mass Bar Association since 1981, specializing in probate, civil litigation, and labor law. And prior to becoming an attorney, he was a high school science teacher for 4 years. His election into the state government was November 1996. Previously, Chris served as member of the Malden School Committee from 1989 to 97, after having been elected chairman in 1990, 92, and 94. Representative Fallon has received multiple acknowledgments and recognitions for his legislative leadership on behalf of the homeless, victims of domestic abuse, veterans, and first responders. He has been a strong advocate for marriage equality, clean elections, and government transparency. Over the last 18 years, his legislative accomplishments have been varied, with particular emphasis relevant to local aid and public education for the city of Malden. Representative Fallon and his wife, Kathy, a microbiologist at Winchester Hospital, have been married for over 30 years, and they have one daughter, Sarah, who is also an attorney. So thank you for that, providing us that introduction. I look forward to our discussion today.
Thank you.
So if you will please, Mr. Fallon, give us your opening statement, and it will not exceed 2 minutes, if you don't mind.
Thank you. That biography was excellent. I couldn't have done a better job if I wrote that myself, but thank you very much, Patty. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for having this opportunity to interact with the people of the 5th Middlesex District. I'm familiar with the League of Women Voters because my wife, Kathy, who, as you mentioned, Patty, I met at Merrimack College over a test tube in the chemistry lab. We were both science majors and went on to receive master's degrees in science, is a former president of the Malden League of Women Voters. And I think, and I better make sure that I'm accurate in this regard before I go further, we've been married 37 years, because if I leave it after over 30, I may be asked why I didn't put it closer to 40. I am a very proud Democrat. I grew up in a household where my mother worked, my father was a police officer, my grandparents were involved in public safety. I was instilled with the principles of Franklin Roosevelt while growing up in the 50s and early 60s, and had the opportunity of a lifetime to witness the administration of John Fitzgerald Kennedy and become involved with the campaign of Robert F. Kennedy in 1968. These principles are ingrained in me. Proud to be a Democrat, but I am a very independent Democrat, an independent voice, currently for the people of Malden and hopefully for the people of the 5th Middlesex. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicely within time. So now we're going to go to the question and answer part of our interview. Candidates have not seen the questions in advance, which were solicited from the public. And in this half an hour, we hope to get to maybe 9 questions. So our first question, Chris, is when you arrive in the Senate, what will be your top priorities for the 5th District? You have 1 minute.
I think to engage all people, despite their race, their cultural backgrounds, their persuasions, to enhance and bring everybody closer to the electorate, the voting process. My priority specifically will be a bond bill for public safety. My second priority, if not the first priority, will also be about jobs and taking a look at the investment tax credits that the legislature has created over the last couple of decades. Find out, try to quantify which of those work and which of those don't. It'll be about jobs, it'll be about public safety, it'll be about public education and local aid. That should be the government's first responsibility.
Thank you. Well, as you mentioned, transportation is critical for the cities and towns which you represent. Can you be more specific about your priorities for transportation and how you would fund them?
Well, and that's a very timely question, Patty, because the transportation bond bill was just engrossed by the House of Representatives. Malden was able to earmark approximately $7 million in that transportation bond bill. And I didn't do that alone. It's a team effort in Malden with the local officials and with the other state legislators like Paul Donato and Paul Brodeur, who, because Malden is so densely populated, Patty, have a small part of the city of Malden as well. But the tax increase that was done on the gas tax was specifically targeted for infrastructure projects throughout the 5th Middlesex, throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We need to have reform within the transportation system. We don't need more super agencies, more bureaucratic administrators overseeing our infrastructure. We need to take a look at the MBTA pension system. We need to investigate a relocation of what money the state has already allocated for our current public transportation system. It's a multi-dimensional task that must be faced and overcome by the legislature.
Thank you. You mentioned the transportation bond bill, but you've also mentioned some things that may go beyond it. Do you have any other ideas about funding?
Well, I think what we've got to really focus on is keeping fares, somewhat inexpensive for our riders. The bond bill has been the #1 mechanism, but again, my focus will be on bringing forward accountability with our current funding systems, a relocation of assets, a downgrade of the bureaucracy and of the administrative involvement. There is money there without making it more expensive for people to get on the Orange Line in Malden or take other public transportation alternatives.
Thanks. And one more follow-up. What is your stand on the ballot initiative to reduce the tax on gasoline?
The gas increase on gasoline I would support. It would be hypocritical for me not to, because of the amount of money that just got allocated for a variety of different infrastructure projects in the city of Malden. However, if we're specifically targeting the indexing of the gas increase, I will support that. If the referendum question passes, I will support that because I believe it wasn't indexed properly.
What do you see as the state's role in funding pre-K and full-time kindergarten education?
Both a moral and a legal obligation. The only way we're going to be able to address a variety of different educational issues, and as a teacher back in the late 70s, early 80s, I witnessed a lot of these problems that haven't been addressed adequately. To some extent they have, but not adequately. Malden boasts, one of the things that Malden can boast about is that it has one of the first pre-K early learning centers and had one of the first pre-K learning centers in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Every child is entitled to a public education. Every parent has the right to choose how their child should be publicly educated. Early intervention, pre-K, is our utmost responsibility when it comes to funding our public educational system.
So in addition to funding the pre-K and full-time kindergarten, what about funding special ed? How do you see the state's role?
Great question. And I don't want to overuse the phrase, Patty, a moral and legal obligation. We have those obligations towards and should have those obligations for every single child in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I've been the chief sponsor over the last several years for the funding of the SPED circuit breaker line item. I led the funding for the reimbursement formula last year, the year before. It'll be one of my priorities either this year in the House or in the Senate if I'm so fortunate enough to be in the Senate.
Thank you. And I'm not going to ask you any other question, but you mentioned the SPED circuit breaker. Can you just explain to the voters what that is?
The SPED circuit breaker is a reimbursement formula based on the different types of educational disabilities in individual education plans that certain children in the respective public school system have.
Thanks. Moving on, Massachusetts has thousands of unfilled jobs requiring skills that many of our unemployed can't fill. Is there a role for the state government to bridge that gap?
There most certainly is. The workforce and development programs, which I have over my legislative tenure consistently have advocated for full funding, the main vehicle that we can use in order to, as you say, bridge that gap. The jobs are out there. There's more jobs, more high-paying jobs, more permanent jobs that can be created. For example, Patty, through a review of the investment tax credits, some of them work, some of them don't. But the funding of the workforce and development programs have to remain a priority in order to get these jobs not only filled but maintained.
Thank you. How do you think health care insurance is working in Massachusetts? And there's more. What's the impact of Obamacare, and does it need any fixing? So we got 3 in 1.
Obamacare does need fixing. And there's a whole nother issue there, an underlying issue. I have a history legislatively of being able to work with people in the other party. I think one of the reasons why Obamacare is not working as well as it was intended is because of the impasse between the parties down in Washington. I've been able to support Republican initiatives without any hesitation because of party politics. I think it's working, but we were the template. I don't want to call it Romney Care, I just want to call it Massachusetts Care. Our program is working. We are having some difficulty, like the federal government is with our website, but our program has been, I believe, the template for Obamacare and other programs throughout the country.
So the fixing that it needs is specific to websites?
Well, no, the fixing is to make sure that we have better access, and thank you for bringing that out, better medical access for those who don't have health care. We must make sure that our health care programs are indeed intended to be made available to all people. So access is important, making it more affordable, working on the deductibles. There is a lot of, I was just using the overlap between Obamacare and the problems we're having with the state with our website as well, because it does limit access, it does limit availability of information for people to be able to take advantage of. That's all. But that was a great point to bring out. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to another topic. So we're on income inequality. It has produced extremes in the distribution of wealth. How do you see this playing out in the 5th Middlesex District?
It is a tremendous gap. The president brought it out in his State of the Union address. The Obamacare is just as much about health care as it is about redistribution of wealth. In order for us to have a fairer system tax-wise, we should be looking at a graduated income tax. That's the type of referendum question that we should be dealing with. Again, we must obligate ourselves to public education. We must obligate ourselves to helping those people who live in the shadows of life, the disabled, the veterans, the elderly. It is our obligation, and here I go again, and forgive me, our moral and legal obligation to make sure that no one is exploited, no one is disadvantaged because they can't afford to pay for whether it be education, health care, a myriad of other circumstances. It's our obligation to do that.
So the state government could address this issue through a graduated income tax.
They could address a redistribution of wealth through a graduated income tax. I think that is the most, I don't want to say modest, but most equitable way that we should be taxing all our citizens. I think those that have been able to better themselves or be able to have a financial windfall, and I'm looking for another more appropriate phrase, I think they should be paying more. I firmly believe that.
And as a state senator, you think you could help bring that about?
I think as a state senator, that would be and should be a priority for every state senator, for every state representative.
All right. And can you tell me how you'd address the lack of diversity of housing?
I think there's a very obvious resolve here for any legislator, senator, rep. People are afraid of the statute that is generally referred to as 40B. 40B is flawed, certainly, through the appeal process. But 40B is one of the most well-intended, well-meaning statutory provisions trying to address our housing issues and the diversity associated with that.
Thank you. And you support 40B?
Very aggressively, because there are right now protections through the appeal process for our cities and towns. Granted, they may need to be enhanced, but I firmly believe that our housing issue can be primarily addressed through the statutory provision 40B.
Right, and I'm just going to do what I did once before and ask for clarification, because some of us know what 40B means and some of us don't. Would you be kind enough to just in one sentence tell us what 40B does?
40B says, in essence, and very generally, that if a city or town that has, that does not have public housing in excess of 10%, 40B will allow a developer who is going to dedicate a portion of their housing development for affordable housing to be able to waive certain local controls, local zoning controls, conservation controls, etc. The flaw with 40B is sometimes it gives the developer the ability to exploit the waivers of these zoning principles. And to that regard, there is a process protecting the cities and towns, but the intent of 40, what statute is not exploited, I guess.
Thank you. That was impossible to do that in one sentence, but thank you.
Thank you.
So, moving on. What is your position on raising the minimum wage here in Massachusetts?
Another very pertinent question. I'm certainly a strong advocate for raising the minimum wage up to $11 an hour. It's been well overdue. We're behind the inflationary rate already on the minimum wage. The minimum wage needs to be raised. Okay, here's the double-edged sword. I do believe, though, when it comes to tip-earning individuals, that we need to have an alternative system in place. A percentage of the minimum wage proposed just for those type of employees.
Thank you. Given the multiplicity of state responsibilities and the expenses they require, do you see opportunities for more efficient use of our tax dollars? And if you do, where?
Oh, my God. As I already mentioned, certainly with our transportation system in particular, our tax dollars can be better used. The reform that we need to do, the overhaul that we need to do with our pension system, with our transportation system, with our welfare system. A major mistake that the legislature made was eliminating the fraud investigation unit of the welfare department. We don't necessarily need to raise taxes to address structural deficiencies in state budgets. We need to think outside the box. We need to go forward and look at how we can do things better.
Thank you.
This is a great topic. I hope we can go further with it. I suspect we're going to.
I'm afraid you're going to have to go further with the voters at another forum because it has moved on to time for your closing statement. So you can include all of it there and you will have a minute.
If I was at all overbearing, let me apologize. I've been the state representative for the city of Malden for 18 years. As you mentioned, Patty, prior to that, 8 years on the Malden School Committee. I'm very passionate, as my parents, as my grandparents were, about public service. We can do better, but we need to think outside the box. We need to work with people on the other side of the aisle, whether we're Democrats, whether we're Republicans. Government also needs to be more transparent. I'm the only candidate in this race that has continuously and consistently voted for mandatory state ethics training for legislators. And that is not the panacea in and of itself, but certainly it's a great start. I'm very passionate. I am very independent. And I hope you'll consider my candidacy on March 4th. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you so much. Representative Christopher Fallon.
Thank you.
And welcome to Anthony Guardia. He currently works as the Director of Development at Home Start, Inc., a nonprofit organization in Boston whose mission is to end and prevent homelessness. They assist veterans, seniors, and families moving from shelters to permanent housing and prevent evictions through mini grants, money management programs, and life skill training programs. Anthony Guardia was born and raised in the district. He is an attorney. He is a graduate of Suffolk University as well as Suffolk University Law School. Anthony served 2 terms on the Wakefield School Committee from 2006 to 2012. In 2010, he was elected by his colleagues on the committee to serve as chairman. In addition to being a homeowner in Wakefield, Anthony serves on the Commission on Disabilities and numerous other civic and church organizations. Most recently, Anthony was instrumental in expanding the Boys and Girls Club of Stoneham by setting up a club in Wakefield. So, welcome.
Thank you.
And we would like to hear your opening statement, if you'll keep that to a minute.
Thank you very much. So my story starts with my family. I was born in Malden, but my parents came from Italy. We moved to Wakefield as a teenager. We moved to Wakefield when I was a teenager, and I was fortunate enough to be elected to the school committee as a college student. Since then, however, I've become a homeowner, an attorney, and as just stated, I currently work as the Director of Development at Home Start. So why am I running? I'm running because I'm realizing that the status quo is just not acceptable. It's not okay that young people cannot find work that can pay for the debt that they've incurred, and it's not okay that older workers cannot find meaningful work. It's not okay that education reform is still needed, that we don't have universal early education, and that the cost of college is increasing at an absurd rate. Finally, it's not okay that our seniors are becoming less and less independent as healthcare costs rise, as do property taxes. So, what am I going to do about it? One, I'll join the fight to increase the minimum wage, have earned sick leave for all workers, and expand networking and job training opportunities. Two, I'd implement universal early education for all our communities. I'd create innovative pilot programs like they're doing in other states to control the cost of college, and I'd reform local aid to make it more fair. Finally, I'd work on expanding property tax credits and lowering the cost of health care so that our seniors can stay independent longer. So thank you. I'm very happy to be here today, and I'm very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great. Thank you so much. We did give you 2 minutes like the other candidates.
No problem. I saw the note. If you saw me looking on the side at the beginning, that's because it was a note saying 2 minutes, not 1.
But for the Q&A, our first question, we would ask that you keep it to a minute. And as I had mentioned before, these questions were submitted by the audience in advance, and none of the candidates had seen them. So, beginning, when you arrive in the Senate, what will your top priorities be for the 5th District?
Well, thank you. Well, I hate to number my priorities because there are so many important issues. But I think the 3 that I just mentioned would be the ones that I would work on. One, it's jobs. And by jobs, I don't mean just for the unemployed, but I mean for the underemployed as well. I think there's a middle generation squeeze where we're seeing a lot of young people struggling to find jobs and a lot of older workers struggling to find meaningful work. So I would take that on right away. Second is education, again, from the earliest levels. We don't have early education here in Mass. We don't have universal pre-K. But a state like Oklahoma does. So I think we need to look at what other states are doing in that regard and fix it. Same with higher education. We have other states like Oregon and California moving in innovative ways to control the cost of college. I think we should be following their lead. And finally, I want to make sure our seniors stay as independent as long as they can. I come from a multi-generational home. I'm fortunate enough to have my nana, my grandmother, live with us, and I want to make sure that they can stay in their homes as long as possible.
Thank you. Transportation is critical for cities and towns that you represent. What are your priorities and how would you fund them?
Oh, great question. I think I'm the only candidate in this race who takes public transportation every day. I take the bus to Oak Grove, then I take the train into downtown Crossing. And what I've noticed is that people are becoming more and more frustrated with the transportation system because what they're seeing is the gas tax is going up, their income tax is going up, their property taxes are going up, but the people who take public transportation aren't seeing the improvements that they want. So they're paying for more, but they're getting the same quality. So what do we need to do is, one, we need to harp on consistency. We need to make sure that our buses are running on time and running adequately. And two, we need to make sure that our trains are doing the same thing. When we get to Oak Grove, or we get to any part of the Orange Line or the commuter rail, how many times do we have to rush or wait because the train isn't running when it said it was going to? So now we have the technology really to improve that system. We have applications for smartphones, we have computer programs. So what I'd like to see us do is really take that and make sure we're holding these services, our public transportation services, accountable to arriving when they say they will and leaving when they say they would. In regards to expansion, I know I only have 15 seconds, we do have to make sure that public transportation is getting out in the suburbs. Unfortunately, the farther you move away from Boston, the harder it is to get into the city, and it really does become a tough issue for those of us who do live in the suburbs.
So you mentioned the gas tax. What is your stand on the ballot initiative that is out now to reduce the tax on gasoline?
I would not reduce the gas tax. I do think it should have a periodic review. I don't like the idea of tying it to inflation. The reason is I think it's a regressive tax. By that I mean it affects those with who cannot afford the best cars. If you cannot afford a fuel-efficient car, if you cannot afford a newer car, you have to usually pay more in the gas tax because your car uses more fuel. So while I wouldn't support reducing it now, I do think we should not be tying it to inflation.
And what do you see as the state's role in funding pre-K and full-time kindergarten education?
As I said earlier, I think the state should be doing it. What bothers me to no end is that other states are doing it. This isn't an idea that, well, Massachusetts can't do it. You're being too naive. Oklahoma, a very conservative state, a very red state, has universal pre-K and universal K for all their students. To think that a student's educational foundation could be dependent on a lottery in Massachusetts really is a shame. So I think it's time the state follow the lead of Oklahoma. It's funny to say, but Massachusetts should follow their lead and create a universal early education program that starts at pre-K and goes into K so that all our students can get a fair start.
So by that, I assume you mean that the state would then fund?
Yes, the state should be funding it a lot like it does education now. You don't put it on the municipalities. What you do is you say, okay, we're going to have a universal pre-K program and a universal K program. We are going to allow the communities to decide how to implement it. If they want to open up a new school for it, have it at one center, have it at multiple schools, leave that to municipal control. But the funding resources have to come from the state, either through Chapter 70 or through separate block grants.
And so as a follow-up to that, what about funding special education, which is such a challenge for the cities and towns?
Absolutely. Now, I saw this on the school committee for 6 years. It was our biggest challenge. What could happen is, if you have one student who is severely special needs, they could be they could use so many resources that it really hurts the other students because you're spending so much. So the state really needs to make sure that a special ed student is getting all the fair chances that any other student should, but it's also paying for it. A student, you shouldn't put that kind of pressure on a family or on that student to come up with the resources. It should be coming from the state.
So the state's going to have to come up with those resources.
Oh, absolutely. It's very unfair to put it on Winchester, Wakefield, Stoneham, and Malden, Melrose, and Reading.
So let's hit another topic. Massachusetts has thousands of unfilled jobs requiring skills that many of our unemployed can't fill. Is there a role for state government to bridge this gap?
Well, we're seeing this in other states now. That's actually, again, one of the reasons why I'm running is I was noticing other states taking on initiatives and leads, and Massachusetts not. I saw the status quo being unacceptable. So when you see Georgia and California following policy initiatives where what they're doing is they're looking at the skill set that employers are asking. They're saying, who has this skill set that is currently unemployed? Let's match them up. If they don't, we should be retraining these people through our public higher education institutions, which Massachusetts has plenty of, and through our community colleges to make sure they can fill those needs. It's happening in other states. This isn't myself or any other politician or any other legislator dreaming or being an ideologue. It's happening. It's happening in Georgia. It's happening in California. Other states are taking a lead in this initiative, and we're not. And that's what we need to be doing.
Thank you. Well, let's move on to health care insurance. Do you think it's working in Massachusetts? And what do you think the impact of Obamacare is, or the Affordable Care Act? And does it need any fixing here?
It does. It absolutely does. This is one of the stories that I hear a lot going door to door, whether it's the small business that can't hire because healthcare costs are too high, whether it's one of my best friends who has a neurological disorder and has to stay on Mass Health and is struggling to find a job because every time they look for a job, the private insurance offered would actually force him to take less net income than staying on Mass Health. I mean, that's completely unfair and unreasonable. And it goes further. I mean, there was a recent report reported by the Globe that 30% of Mass Health could be could be waste and it could be fraud. So how do we fix it? So one is I think you should open up mass health to more people. More of the general public should be able to get into mass health, should be able to use it, and should be able to keep it if they go into the private sector or if they decide to just use it to compete with a private insurance company. But second, what we need to do is make sure we're lowering the costs of healthcare overall. We do that first, again, by making sure there's no fraud, there's no waste, and no abuse. That takes tremendous oversight. But second, we do it by creating an atmosphere of competition. So if you have mass health available to more residents, and you see the benefits of it, and you see more and more individuals signing up for it, it would force the private health insurance to lower their rates or lower their costs, and I think create an environment that overall reduces costs for most individuals, families, and businesses.
I just want to make sure I understood
absolutely.
your proposal. You're suggesting that mass health compete with the private insurance companies.
Absolutely. I think mass health should be opened up to the public. I think more people should be able to compete. And I see this going door to door. When you talk to small business owners, when you talk to friends who have health insurance issues or who have autoimmune or neurological disorders, they want to stay on mass health. They really are forced to stay on mass health because of the economy of it. So if you allow that type of, for lack of better terms, I'll use public option, but if you allow that kind of situation and that kind of availability, I think it would create a more vibrant healthcare situation.
All right, thank you. So digging deep into some of these issues, income inequality has produced extremes in the distribution of wealth. And how do you see this playing out in the 5th Middlesex District? I'll give you a minute and a half to reflect on that.
Thank you. No, you see it everywhere. We see it, unfortunately, taking a toll on a lot of residents where, I think I talked about this a little bit earlier, where you're seeing more and more people as they're getting older becoming frustrated because they can't break into or get back into the mid-level or higher-end jobs that they had. They're forced to take jobs that they don't find are meaningful. So what we need to be doing to address income inequality in our district is really making sure we're getting people the correct skill set and the education they need, and making sure that we're plugging them into the jobs that are currently available, like we talked about earlier. I don't think it's a situation where somebody, at least in the 5th Middlesex District and in these communities, doesn't want to see somebody succeed, or this stereotype of the rich versus the poor. I think it's about expanding opportunities for those who are currently struggling. And right now the status quo tells us no more opportunities, we don't know what to do. But what we're learning from other states and other policy positions is that you can allow individuals to retrain, you can allow them to go into another networking opportunities, and through that find more meaningful work that increases their income, that allows them to pay for college, that allows them to pay for other initiatives, that allows them to get out from under the debt that they've incurred.
So very specifically then, from this general idea, what would you do as a state senator to address this issue of income inequality?
Well, I think it goes back to, I always talked about investing in 3 things. I think you have to, invest in small businesses. You invest in them by allowing our credit unions and our small banks to have capital so that they can hire more people, and you lower healthcare costs so that they can hire more people. The second is you invest in our workers, and you do that by, again, increasing the minimum wage, having earned sick leave for all workers, not tying that to unemployment, but also, I keep hitting on this point, allowing them to retrain and to network into other jobs. The third is investing in our community. And this is something we talked about already too in regards to transportation and early education. We make sure that they have an early education system for their children. We make sure they have transportation so that they can go and go to work and come back from work. And I think when you invest in those 3 things, you invest in the small businesses, you invest in the worker, and you invest in our community, you create a situation where there's upward mobility again, and you don't have the kind of massive income inequality we see now.
So drawing upon your experience with the nonprofit you work with now, how would you address the lack of diversity of housing?
Oh, good. Can I get like 10 minutes? No. So to begin, I think when you look at housing, you have to scale back. It is not just a diversity of a lack of housing. It's people also not being able to afford housing, period. So for example, we see a lot of people at Homestart who are calling us because they are falling behind on their rent, because their wage where they work isn't paying them enough, or they don't have sick time, or their car got towed. We are getting a lot of calls of people from shelters wanting to move out and get into housing, but they don't have the ability to afford the rents in the surrounding communities. So what do we need to do? It's relatively, at least in my opinion, it's simple. I see it at Homestart. One, we need to fund more voucher programs and more prevention programs so that people can get into housing and can stay there. Once they're in housing, though, the most important part is what we do at Homestart is create a stabilization program. So what we do is we create a program around that individual and around that family so that they can stay in housing, get into the community, and thrive.
I know there's a lot more you could say
I know,
on
I'm
that
trying
topic.
I was going to say there's, God, if you look at my notes, I think housing and homelessness takes up half the page.
Well, perhaps we can hurry through some of these others. You can come back to it. So we would like to hear about your position on raising the minimum wage.
I think, and if I said this before, so maybe we can hurry it through it. I think I said it before, is I do think we should increase the minimum wage. I think it's long overdue. I think it's about time, and I think, again, it feeds into so many other issues that we talked about here today.
Given the multiplicity of state responsibilities and the expenses they entail, do you see opportunities for more efficient use of our tax dollars? And if so, where?
Oh, absolutely, and this is one of the reasons I'm running, and it comes from my experience at Homestart. So I'll give you one quick example. In Homestart's prevention program, we can prevent a family from being homeless for $572. The landlord is happy, the family's happy, and everybody gets, and morally, the family stays in their home and doesn't have to be moved into a shelter. If we don't give them that micro grant of a few $100s, that family ends up in the state shelter system. Usually they're in the state shelter system for 9 months. That is at a cost to taxpayers of about $3,000 a month. So it's $36,000 versus $572. Forget the moral implications of putting a family in a motel room or in a shelter versus staying in their own home. Fiscally, it makes sense. And we're seeing this in other nonprofits. We're seeing other nonprofits in Massachusetts. We're very lucky in Greater Boston to have a wide array of them. So we're seeing it at Homestar. We're seeing it at the Pine Street Inn. We're seeing it at Home Found and Impact. We're seeing all these nonprofits take on initiatives and do more with less. They are helping more people with less money because they're being innovative, they're being imaginative, and they're coming up with all these incredible programs. I mean, that's what we need to be doing in Massachusetts, and that's how we can really be saving tax dollars and helping more people. It's incredible, and it's happening everywhere but in state government.
Wow, thank you. You put a lot of numbers to that general question. It's very helpful. And we also wanted to ask, given the density of population in the 5th District, what do you see as the right balance between development and recreational uses in and around the Fells?
Oh, great. Very good question. I'm going to step back a little bit and just talk about development in general, because we see this happening everywhere in the district, not just in the Fells, whether you're talking about Weiss Farm in Stoneham, the new parking garage in Wakefield, the hospital in Stoneham. I mean, there's a long list of projects. I think what you have to do, one, is consider the practical implications. I become very wary of development projects. I go into it with a suspicion and a hesitation because being on the school committee, you want to see the practical impact. You want to see, okay, how many families is this going to bring? So how many students are we going to have in addition to our school system? How many extra police officers are we going to need? How many extra first responders? How many extra firefighters? What I don't think the state does enough of is the state doesn't provide the resources through the local aid formula, Chapter 70 and Chapter 90, to make sure our communities are ready to handle these kind of developments. So what happens is they become very they become very unfortunate, they become very sad, and you see a lot of community infighting. And it's unfortunate because I think there is a middle ground, there is a place we can work together, but when you're on the school committee and you see a development of, say, I'll use Weiss Farm as an example, of 300 units coming in, and you're thinking how many families and how many students and the traffic implication, and you're not seeing any increase from assistance from the state, very rightfully so, you're going to say absolutely not, and you're going to be very wary of any other development.
Thank you so much. And I think we have time for one more question. And I wanted to expand upon the homelessness issue because I felt like we really cut you off there.
Oh, no problem. For people at home, there's a group right here waving cards. So when I'm looking over, that's why. So if I could...
Yeah, just expand on where you were going.
So what I see at Homestart, and this really talks about homelessness in general, is that the state could be doing much more to help people in need. So I'm going to use housing search as an example. So families in a shelter, they're looking for help. They want to get out of the shelter. They talk to a Homestart advocate. And the Homestart advocate has a network of landlords that they've obtained through relationship building, through the 20 years at Homestart, that say, hey, we have housing, we have availability, we'd like to have a family come in and live here. So what we can do is we match them up. And usually, again, the average cost for us is about $1,000 if we're moving somebody from shelter to housing. Again, if it's prevention, it's less than half than that. But what we do is we don't just say good luck, and this is where I really want to harp on the state. We then help the family thrive in that community. So if the reason they became homeless was a lack of skills training, we help them find an education center or a place where they can get those job skills. If it's a single mother, we try to help them with daycare programs and, again, try to get them life skills training so they have better money management, better time management skills and whatnot. So,
and if I may, the state involvement in this that you want to see happen?
So what I'd like to do is I'd like to see the state replicate programs like Homestart. So what Homestart, one of our problems is we just don't have enough money. You know, we can't help. There's a waiting list of people in homeless shelters. There's a waiting list of people who are calling us saying, I need help, I'm falling behind on my rent. And when all this happens, you know, we say, well, we've only fundraised X amount of money this year. We've only fundraised Y amount of money this year. So unfortunately, for the people we can't help, they fall to the state. They cost taxpayers more. And it's an unfortunate situation. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to see the state get involved and replicate these successful models that help more people and, again, save taxpayer dollars.
Thank you. And if you'll slide right in from there to your closing statement of a minute.
No, well, thank you very much. Again, what I'd like to point out is that my candidacy represents a choice for change. And what I mean by that is if you look around and you see that the status quo is unacceptable, then I hope I'm your candidate. Because right now it's not acceptable. It's the reason why I got into this race. I saw too many young people and older workers struggling to find work, period, and struggling to find meaningful work. I saw too many people who were struggling with early education, providing for their K-12 system, seeing the unfairness in local aid. And I saw more and more people struggling to pay for college. And finally, I can't tell you how many doors I've knocked on where it was a senior citizen who was losing their independence and felt that they had to ask for more and more from their own children to either stay in their home or to avoid institutional care. And I think what a sad situation this is. And I think the experience I bring from the nonprofit sector, the experience I bring as a municipal official, allows me to be imaginative, allows me to be innovative and say we can create programs that help more people for less. I've seen it every day, and I ask for your vote on March 4th if you'd like to see that as well.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Anthony
you.
Guardia. Thank you so much to WinCam Cable for filming this forum live. It will be rebroadcast on Comcast Channel 9, Verizon Channels 37, and on demand at www.wincam.org between February 21st and March 3rd. WinCam is also making this broadcast available for download to cable stations located within the 5th Middlesex District via mymasstv.org and pegmedia.org. And to all of you who are registered voters in the 5th Middlesex, please go to the polls on Tuesday, March 4th and vote for one of our 3 fine candidates. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. The League of Women Voters encourages all eligible voters to vote. This interview has been sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Winchester. Thank you.